Hey guys, what's up? This is Knash here from MyGeekReview.com, bringing you a movie review of Beautiful Creatures. What are Beautiful Creatures, you ask? Beautiful Creatures is a new fantasy romance movie, and no, it's not romance as in chick flick, but at the same time it is. We're going to break down into effects, scenery, acting, and story. Let's start with the effects. Holy shit, these effects look amazing. I mean, towards the very end, you don't see as many effects, but you still see some pretty beast effects. The eyes for the characters. Oh my god, those eyes. They will have, for the dark casters as they're called, the eyes will be kind of a demonic yellowy fire. And for the normal casters, as far as I know, they look just like normal eyes, because they didn't really show anything particularly off about the normal casters. Now, for those of you who haven't seen this movie, I'm going to back up a bit, and first of all I'm going to say, spoilers inbound! There are going to be lots of spoilers in this video, guys, so if you haven't seen the movie, stop right here. And I mean, stop. I will be spoiling this movie big time. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the characters and effects some more. There are some really interesting effects done. Towards the end of the movie, you see one of the characters die, but then the shell fades away and it's a different character completely, which threw me for a loop. It was interesting. There's thunder raining down at random times, kind of. When the two leads are making out and about to screw each other, there's boom! Thunder hits the sign and lights it on fire. Now here's the problem with that. They didn't catch on fire themselves. They were this close to fire. What the fuck, nothing spread? No, something should have spread. You should have had fire spreading onto the characters' clothes themselves. If I had fire right here behind me, and I didn't get touched in flames, you think something was weird, right? I saw that too. Now the interesting thing with this movie is that it is a fantasy movie with powers and magic and stuff. So there are some liberties that you have to grant, but if it's not an explained thing, then what the hell is going on? You should have explained that fire doesn't affect them, etc, etc, etc. The effects, though, are really interesting. There's one scene that I really love in particular. It's not really effects heavy, but they're at the dinner table, and the room just starts fucking spinning. I mean, there's one caster on this side, and another caster on this side, and there's a fucking table with the male lead, the rest of the family, and it's just, their powers are duking it out with each other. It's like, whoosh, 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 kind of like this, whoosh, 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 whoosh. Everyone's just kind of like sitting there like, oh joy, not now. I mean, one of the male characters is just sitting there eating his food, like nothing's going on. So that was pretty awesome. On to story. The story, while really girly and romantic, was actually pretty interesting. A little lacking. I don't know what they could have added to make it better, but it was definitely interesting. The characters had good depth to them, the ones that were important anyways. Even characters that weren't important had some depth, which I kind of liked. Because normally in a movie, you don't have characters that actually have depth unless you're, like, the main two leads. There could be male lead 1 and female lead 1 and male lead 2 and female lead 2. And those four will have depth, but female actress 2 and male actor 1 will have no depth at all if they're not leads. So you get a little bit of that. The story is, again, a fantasy magic kind of story, so there are liberties you have to take. They don't really explain the magic aspect of it. They just explain that, yes, we're witches and warlocks, or whatever you want to call them, but we prefer casters. We're casters. We've been around forever. It's just kind of, they don't explain how they got their powers, they just have their powers. The whole premise of this movie revolves around the female lead, Lena Duquesne, who, when she turns 16, will be claimed for either the light casters or the dark casters. And it's not necessarily up to her, it's up to her true nature to decide. Normally you'd think, oh, well, great, obviously she's going to be chosen by the light casters, I won't even bother to see this movie. Stop. You're wrong. Because, oh, what? Plot twist. There's a curse on the family. Years ago, 4 or 5 generations, one of the casters used a forbidden spell to bring back her beloved from the dead, therefore giving up her soul. By the way, she ended up killing him anyways, which is kind of interesting because you sacrifice yourself to save your loved one. You give up your soul, and then once you've given up your soul, you are dark no matter what, and you kill the guy you just brought back. I like that. That's interesting, actually. It's very clever. It's different. So there's a curse, and that's what they're trying to do. Besides just trying to prevent her from being claimed for the dark, they're trying to figure out how to break this curse. Because whether her true nature decides dark or light, good or bad, the curse will ensure that she's chosen for the dark. Now, the main characters you see in this movie are Lena Duquesne. She's really the focus of the story. Yes, there's male lead 1. That character is important, but nowhere near as important as Lena Duquesne. Let's talk about scenery, shall we, in the backgrounds and those locations. It's set in a southern town. I think it was Georgia. I'd never heard of this place, so for all I know, it could be real, it could be fake. But it was a small town, and it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Nobody really knows it. So they have some really interesting kind of, not necessarily rural, but they have some interesting scenes and locations. There's no real farms. The main places you see are the main character's houses, which is the Ravenwood Manor for Lena, and then the male lead A's house, or male lead 1, not male lead A, and the school a little bit, and then the Castor Library, which was amazing. It's this underground secret library that, and here's where it gets funny, used to be under Washington, D.C. until Nancy Reagan, yes, as in President Reagan's wife, who apparently knew of the Castor's existence, said, no, you have to move. For some reason, and they do not tell you why, she's the only mortal Castors were ever afraid of. And I have no idea why, but it is fucking hilarious, because it's like, okay, you're afraid of one woman, but you don't tell us why? Go into more depth on that. You should have told us more about that. It's like, we're gonna bring it up. Why the fuck aren't you gonna elaborate on it? So it's interesting. I'm rambling here, guys, so I'm gonna start wrapping this up right now. Story, out of 5, I'd probably have to give it a 3, 3.5 at best. Because it's interesting, it's enticing, it's captivating, but there's a lot of room for improvement. Effects, I have to give that a 4 out of 5. It's because the effects are just so effecty, kind of. There's not a real word for it. Just the effects are really good. They're high quality, they're well done, they're interesting. Hey, you know what, let me rewind. There's one scene, he pulls up to Ravenwood Manor to try and find Lena Duquesne, who is locked up for her safety by her uncle. And he pulls up, he goes in through the gate, even though he's not supposed to. It's one of those, like, manors with a gate that you're like, oh yeah, iron gate, not gonna stop me. He pushes it open, he walks forward. All of a sudden, boom, what the fuck, he's right back behind his car, which is interesting. So he's like, wait, what the hell? So he starts walking backwards to try and go the way he came. And then he sees it from the other side of the gate. He sees himself coming through. So he kind of went back in time. And then you start to see him running through the forest, and it's just kind of like blurry. He's like passing through, I guess, different dimensions or something. And he gets trapped in a spell, where it's kind of like black tendrils or something come up and like grab him from the ground, prevent him from moving. And then you see Lena just like this, just holding her hands out, pulling the dark spell in. And it was like a protection spell that her uncle set up so that she can't be bothered when he's not around. And what you find out later in the movie is he is not around because every day he's at the Castor Library trying to find a way to reverse the curse. So I'm not going to spoil the ending for you guys, but let me tell you this. You won't expect the ending coming. I didn't see it coming, and neither will you, unless you know the story. So let's get back on track. We went over effects, we went over story, let's go over locations. Locations aren't really something you can give a quantifiable number to for category, but since it's pretty much in between, I'll have to give it a 3. Now, is there anything wrong with the locations, but there's nothing spectacular about them either. Lastly, we're going to give right into the characters. The characters, like I said, had depth to them, which I really like. All the characters had some depth. So I'm definitely going to have to give this a 4.5 out of 5 for the characters. I really recommend this movie, guys. There's nothing particularly spectacular about it, but it's actually really interesting. So for my Geek review, this is Knash. Geek this.